Pride Month. I just want to acknowledge that and just say happy Pride to everyone. Ways to engage today. We're just asking folks, please make sure that you stay muted throughout the entire session. This will just help us make sure that everything goes seamlessly and we're able to stay on time. If you have any specific questions, please put it in the chat box, but start with question, and then enter your question. By doing so, it makes it easier for us on the OCF OST team to be able to find your questions. Additionally, if you have resources that you would like to share with everyone, please do the same. Start with resource, and then the link to your resources. Again, this practice just really helps us find these things in the chat box. We don't want to miss your question, and we want to make sure that after the meeting, if we weren't able to get to something, we can easily find it and answer your question or share your resource later. Hi, Mercer. We're going to start today's session with a short guided meditation. So wherever you might be, if you're sitting down or maybe you're just like laying down, taking this meeting on your bed or something, I would be very jealous. But we're just going to do a little bit of a guided meditation. So if you can, wherever you are, please plant your feet, toes down into the ground, and try to just relax your body, asking you to sit up. Good posture. Maybe you're in a chair. I'm in this wonderful gaming chair. So I'm actually, if I scoot back into the seat, my feet don't touch the ground. So I'm going to stay forward, but I'm going to make sure I align my vertebrae. And I'm going to ask folks, if you can, with me, let's just close our eyes. If you're able to, rest your palms on your lap, remembering to plant our feet into the ground, making sure we can feel the floor. We're going to take 3 deep breaths together. Let's inhale through our nose and exhale through our mouth. Again, inhaling through our nose, exhaling through our mouth. One last time together. Inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth. And I want you to continue breathing. As you inhale through your nostrils, fill your belly with air and exhale through your mouth, letting it all go. I'm going to ask that you bring attention to your toes. Maybe wiggle them and feel the floor beneath your feet. What does the ground feel like? Feel the weight of your ankles pressing into the ground. And let's travel up through our calves and into our knees. Notice any tension or maybe even tingling, different sensations as we move through the body. From your knees, across your lap, up to your hips. Feel where you're seated. Is it soft or is it hard? Are you comfortable? And then up through your spine, vertebrae by vertebrae. Are you slouching? Are you sitting up? Are you arching your back? And up through your vertebrae into your shoulders. Feel your shoulder blades. Are they pulled together? Do you have a knot in your shoulder? Any tension? And from your back, since we're at your shoulder blades, let's move to the front into your chest. And let's take a breath together, inhaling and exhale. Maybe you felt your diaphragm move. Feel the air in your lungs, maybe even filling your belly. And let's move from our chest up to our neck. And just feel where your head rests atop your neck. Lower your tongue from the roof of your mouth. Maybe you're holding tension in your jaw. Allow yourself to let that tension go. Maybe even hang your mouth open to relax your jaw. Were you clenching your teeth? Is your throat dry? Take a deep breath in through your nostrils and exhale through your mouth. What did you smell as you inhaled? Did you taste anything on your tongue? Notice your eyes. Are you squeezing them shut, or are they still open? Are they relaxed, your eyelids? Are you twitching? And what about your eyebrows? Are they arched? Are they coming together? And let's travel to the very top of your head. Does it feel like something's pulling you up or pushing you down? Or is it pulling you in another direction? Feel that space atop. And now let's go back into our body and pinpoint any sensations. When we did our body scan, did you feel tightness in a knee or a knot in your shoulder? Warmth in your belly? Did you taste something in your mouth? We're going to take 3 deep breaths together again. Remember to inhale through your nostrils and exhale through your mouth. We're going to inhale together 1 and exhale. Inhaling again 2. Exhale. Last breath together. Inhale and exhale. Feel free to stay here as you need to, and when you're ready, open your eyes. And as we're here, just notice where your body is as we move through our conversation. Feel free to use this guided meditation for your work with your staff or your students. I like to use this guided meditation before entering into conversations that might be difficult or hard for individuals. We never know where folks are coming from or what they're experiencing when we first meet them. So it's nice to be able to take a moment and share an experience together. And that experience can be just as simple as taking 3 deep breaths together. Now it's time to transition us into our conversation.
Monica, can I say something really quickly?
Sure.
Yeah, so I love doing this meditation. My child is ripping paper, sorry. But I love doing this meditation and just kind of really doing a full body scan because I think we all understand that trauma and stress really manifests itself physically, and it kind of takes storage in your body. So really understanding like where your body holds stress and where your body holds trauma is an important piece to figuring out how you heal from stress and trauma and how you are able to properly cope with it. So, you know, as we are either moving into some type of in-person programming or virtual programming with our students who have been inside for months, I think it can be really important and a really transformative project and thing to kind of do with your students on occasion.
Totally, I agree. Thank you. So just want to make sure, just want to remind folks, please stay muted throughout this conversation. We're going to really utilize that chat box and the raise your hand feature in this meeting. So if you want to share anything vocally, you're more than welcome to. We just ask that you raise your hand and that we are able to call on you just so we're not speaking over each other. So the first topic that I wanted to bring to us today is what it's like speaking with adults. All of us in the room are adults who work with young people and who work with other adults. So we would love to know, what conversations have you had with your staff and your team, or are caregivers coming to you for support or information? And if you have any strategies to share in terms of how you're having these conversations or navigating current events with other adults. And again, feel free to answer in the chat box. Chat box is on my right, so I might be pointing in the wrong direction for you. But feel free to utilize that chat box to answer these questions, or raise your hand. Use the raise your hand feature in the on the Teams, so that we can see your hand raised and you're able to share vocally and unmute yourself. And I would love to know, even as simply as like, have folks had conversations with their team or their staff about the current events? Have there been conversations about anti-racism work, of equity? And if there haven't been, that's okay too. We just want to get a feel for what's happening out in your world.
So Aaliyah from ECS said that we first asked students what they know about the situation, and then we talked about how they feel and what they can do to help and change what's going on.
That's great. And I would love to ask Leah, have you had a similar conversation with your team, with your group leaders, site directors? Sort of, what is that like on the adult level? From Gabby, our site has been emailing our families and posting to our Facebook resources for our families to utilize for support. We've also been turning some of our unstructured hangout time with our students into a safe space for them to share their thoughts and feelings regarding everything going on. We've been trying to be as supportive and proactive as possible. Elaine, you are in the chat, so feel free if you want to answer the question and type your answers into that chat, and raise your hand if you want to share vocally. And someone else saying, we really listen to students and let students have a conversation with each other, and we supervise them. And we will definitely come back to this topic of like, how are we talking with our youth and our young people? But for the next couple of minutes, I'm really interested in knowing what have been the conversations with your team. Are you having these conversations with your team? Or our caregivers, our parents, family, the adults in your students' lives, are they coming to you with any questions or anything like that?
And I think it's really important to have these conversations with your staff and with caregivers, because as the adults in kids' lives, we're also dealing with this trauma. Even though we're the adults and we're the people that our kids look to, we are still dealing with it. Like for me, last week was just so tough. It was just so horrible. So kind of trying to work through that with other adults before you begin to talk with your students about it is really important, so that your staff are able to kind of work through some of that. So Aaliyah in the chat box said that, yes, we talked about it first in a team meeting, and then we tried to incorporate their social emotional learning curriculum and monitored how we feel before we talk to the students. Thank you, Aaliyah. And Gabby in the chat box and members of our team have been in contact throughout the week and have gone to protest together. Yes, it can be difficult trying to work through these topics. Yeah, yes, mm-hmm. It can be difficult trying to work these topics when some staff members, adults, may not have the same morals. Yeah.
And I think that's a really real thing, right? Like knowing that individuals will have different opinions and perspectives about what's happening right now, and the ability to be able to say, I hear you and I understand our differences, right? Like just at least being able to know that you're being heard and that your perspective is understood, that not necessarily we're not out to maybe, especially in a workplace, it's hard to have conversations like this. We want to stay professional. So being able to listen to understand, but also know where those boundaries are. And I see Charmaine said, we have had a conversation with our youth and their families on Zoom to check in to see how they have been impacted, if they felt safe, are they experiencing anxiety, and if they needed support. We shared the resource that the school district shared for families dealing with COVID. That's great. We will be sharing some resources towards the tail end of this Lunch and Learn, so be on the lookout for some helpful links. I'll be dropping in the chat box in a little bit. Alrighty, and I would like to turn to the next topic of talking with youth. So we've started on this conversation already, and would love to know, how are you checking in with youth? I know some folks are saying they're having Zoom check-ins, but we'd love to know, like, what does that look like? How do you start that? Do you do any activities, or do you just talk? Is there any art making, music, or anything like that involved when you have these conversations? And would love to know if you feel comfortable sharing what feelings or emotions have been expressed from your young people. What do young people of Philadelphia's OST network feel right now? And is your teaching strategy shifting or transforming as the days go on? Feel free to answer any or none of those questions. We're also happy to take any questions if you have any related to this topic of working with young people. And as a reminder, if you would like to hop off of mute and share something vocally, feel free to raise your hand in that feature, and we'll definitely call on you.
So it looks like Charmaine said that we've had a conversation with our youth and their families on Zoom to check in and see how they've been impacted, if they felt safe, are experiencing anxiety, if they needed support. We already talked about that. Sorry. My chat is a little slow. Sorry.
That's okay.
Gabby mentioned that it's sometimes difficult trying to work through these topics when some staff members and adults may not have the same morals.
Yeah, I think when you want to get into conversations with young people, it's good to be able to meet with your team first and at least be able to establish some common ground, or at least a common goal before you enter into conversations about racism or equity, to really be able to agree as a team what your common goal is from the conversation.
Andrea said that my students have expressed fear. We are sure to have a time of sharing and support before addressing anything else they really needed. And I think that's a really good point to make, and kind of goes along with this health and wellness theme that we've been talking about for the summer and for the fall. Not only have our students been going through a lot of loss and grief over the past 4 months, but so have staff. And it's really, really difficult to try to get to the business of programming without kind of addressing some of that stuff. It's gonna be hard for kids to kind of, whenever you go back into in person, to like to make that transition. So understanding that, like, you can't really get to the business of camp, you can't really get to the business of after school or out of school time without really confronting some of that. I also think it's really important, and we talked about this in our Friday session, Communities of Practice, around building that trust throughout the year, because students may not feel, if they don't trust you, they may not feel comfortable with really, really talking to you about all of this stuff. So Gabby said, especially when you love and respect them, and considering the professional setting, we're talking about staff again. It could be tough, definitely. But fortunately, the staff I work with are all dedicated to supporting our kids above everything, despite differences we may have. Thank you for that. Iris from Central Nueva said that she starts with checking in, how they are feeling, and kind of continuing on the theme of Big Cats, and we read a book about feelings, ending with drawings that make you feel good, and then drawing regarding the books that we view. And yes, the youth are very tired of being in the house all the time.
Mm-hmm. And it's very interesting that we're sort of in this time in history where collectively we're all experiencing something together, but physically we're not together. So that idea of physically I'm alone, or I might feel alone, right? Like I'm sitting in this room or I'm right in front of my computer alone, but I also know that I'm not the only person experiencing this. And sometimes that can be hard. And I know for myself personally, it's hard to wrap your head around knowing that like I'm in this bubble of here, but that there's a larger bubble of everyone else also experiencing a pandemic, also experiencing these things, also experiencing protests and really hard conversations about racism and equity. Thank you, Samantha, for dropping that link in for the Talking About Race Toolkit. Definitely very useful right now. Are folks shifting their teaching strategies? I noticed like someone said that they're incorporating things into their social emotional learning curriculum. Have there been other shifts or transformations of how you maybe incorporate social emotional learning or other things into what you're already providing to young people virtually? Or maybe what you plan to do for the summer? Feel free to continue responding to any of the questions or continuing the conversation in the chat. I'm just going to keep us moving into the next topic as we sort of hit a pause. I'm just going to keep us moving. Here are some resources that the OCF OST team has pulled together. So for OST, what we've done is we started an email chain specifically with our team. Since we can't meet in person, at least we can do it over email and teams like this. And what we have is an ongoing chain of emails with different resources and things that are helpful for ourselves professionally and personally. In the chat box, I'm dropping a link or a list of links that you can utilize. The links are in order of what's on our presentation right now. So just really quickly for folks to know, again, those links are specifically for conversations about racial equity.
And as Lanika drops those links in the chat box, Brenda said that for summer, we plan on introducing different ways children can express themselves. For example, teaching them how to keep a journal, meditating through various activities, walking, coloring, listening to music and dance, and more specifically, movements with mantras. Very awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask for the group like how everybody has been feeling just in the midst of all of this? Like what is our own reaction to all of this and being workers in like education and social workers and in the communities that are being impacted? Like how are you all feeling? Because I know for me, I felt hurt. I felt um weighed down. Like I felt overwhelmed with the amount of work that still needs to be done in our communities, and not just for racial equity, but also in just enlightening our own communities about what they can do for themselves to kind of get out of the, disparities that they're put into. So just, how are you all feeling and how are you all taking it in?
So for me, it's always very difficult. This is these these incidences are not siloed, and they're not independent of each other. I think, particularly with like just having been at home, and then the Amy Cooper situation where you feel like she was kind of weaponizing herself, and all of that, and then going into the George Floyd murder. It creates this, you kind of, at least for me, I think it made people understand like the full picture and the full scope of it, and the full scope of how um, how your race can be weaponized, and whether for the good or for the bad. For me, it's been difficult, because I have a black son, I have a black husband, and those two are the most important, people in my life. And to think, that that my child, my heart that lives outside of me could not come home one day, because of that, is like, it is a just, heart wrenching, can't even explain how it feels. And to think that, the love of my life, the two loves of my life, could just like not come home. I share with my husband that like he likes to go on walks at like 5:30 in the morning, and he always is, ribbing on me because I'm like, you got to bring your ID, don't wear a hoodie. Like I'm always terrified when he goes out. And it's just those feelings of like of high anxiety. I think last week I definitely was just very anxious. Every time they went outside, I was just like, I don't go outside. I just wanted to like put them in a bubble, just like a huge bubble. And again, like me kind of working through that trauma and understanding, where trauma lies in my body, and kind of figuring that stuff out, was hugely important to letting go of some of that anxiety.
Yeah, thank you, Sam and Naomi. I just want to shout out some folks in the chat box. So, and just going through really quickly, folks are saying one day at a time. Every day is different at this point, and I so feel that a lot of things change. There's a lot of shifting and transformation that's happening. So definitely every day is different. Other folks saying, I'm tired. It's hard to deal with these things and still have to deal with the needs of programs, summer programs, supporting staff, children, and families. It's very overwhelming. And yes, I deeply feel that being able to hold community in a space, and then to be able to hold your family in a space and your friends in space, like putting all of that in your heart and being able to have enough time to also have something for yourself, can be very difficult and incredibly overwhelming. And again, folks echoing, it's very overwhelming. We haven't really had a chance to breathe and relax. Summer planning was already a lot of pressure, and then it's weird to have to remind yourself to take a second and take care of yourself. yes, it's so strange to know that like we can definitely just keep chugging along and going and going. And maybe some folks are part of my self-care session yesterday, but we had a conversation about how our bodies sort of like keep us going and keep us going, and we don't always have time to be thankful for it. So even just like grabbing your shoulders and giving yourself a quick hug, 15-second hug, might make a difference in your day, and that could be your self-care practice, right? Or some folks just taking 15 seconds to just not think, right? Being able to take a second or two to take care of yourself is incredibly important.
So folks in the chat were saying, this issue has been ongoing. I'm so sad that we're experiencing this yet again. My heart is warmed by the outpouring of support recognized around the world. Yes, I limit myself to what I watch and listen for my own mental health. We are constantly traumatized by images of racial degradation and unlawful actions. And yeah, I think that is a very important thing to note. It's just a kind of reopening of the wound to continuously see Black bodies being killed on TV. Like it's traumatizing. It's a traumatic event, and it's important to, in terms of our self-care and even the self-care of our staff and students, really getting them to understand that like sometimes you just got to put down the screen and the phone and just take care of yourself. So Iris said that, it's been a challenge with virtual teaching, with the virtual teaching the pandemic created, very stressful, anxiety to, bringing educational projects for the group that I work with, the injustice that has occurred before, and now it may be fearful since our community were the ones that got burned, and there's like the closing of the stores and kind of all of the things that happened during the uprisings last week. And yeah, I mean, even I live in Germantown, but like hearing the booms at night is really weird and unsettling. So Iris said that every time a firework goes off, you think it's close to you because you're sensing that trauma. Shakira said, ever since Trayvon Martin, I feel like I always felt some type of fear. Yeah, that something like this could happen to me or somebody close to me. She said she was fresh out of high school at the time. So just taking it day by day, and then, yes, realizing when to take a break from the media.
Yeah, and I'm really thankful for all of you who are sharing your thoughts and feelings. It's really nice to have this safe space to kind of share those emotions that we're having. And I just want everybody to realize or to think about, if we're having these emotions and these feelings, how are our little ones feeling? From the kindergartners to, excuse me, to our high school kids who are leading protests, who are organizing, and how can we support them in those experiences? Because even our youngest ones can be agents of change. And I think as we put together our activities for this summer, excuse me, thinking about like what can my kindergartners do in the spirit of change? Is it a story that I read them about Ruby Bridges, and we talk about how we should love each other and how we should be welcoming, and how it was really mean for those people to spit on her, and how it was probably scary for her to walk into her classroom that was empty with one teacher and she needed to have police escorts. Having those conversations is helpful for them to digest, because they are seeing it on TV. They're seeing it outside their front door. They're walking to their local grocery store and seeing that it was looted and wondering, why did this happen? Why is this going on in my community? Why do we have to go to, another community to find groceries that we could have easily gotten down the street? And then kind of, I guess I'm challenging you all to take it a step beyond just let's, create a picture of our community. Maybe let's create a chant where we talk about how everyone is beautiful and how we can all help our community. One of the things that we did in Freedom Schools was every day we started with our Harambe circles, and the Harambe circles included various chants that highlighted freedom fighters like Fannie Lou Hamer that highlighted the struggle of equality and just equity and racial equity. But it also highlighted just how much we like to have fun and how valuable we are in our communities. So recognizing those things within your programs, I think, is super helpful because it shows that we're willing to embark on that journey with our kids. And things are changing everywhere now because of this. And we're completely in a new civil rights movement around the world. So thinking about how do we help support and create developmentally appropriate content within our programs to engage the kids, because from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade, there's a way to have those conversations. There's a way to help them feel empowered to share their thoughts and feelings, but also to create action. What are they doing for social change? Is it creating an activity where they look out their front door and they see some trash and, you know, they pick up pieces of paper, obviously with supervision because we know where these kids live. But you know, kind of if you're in person, like, is that an opportunity for you to grab some paint and maybe paint the wall from some graffiti to beautify the area? So thinking of those type of things, of how do we create our kids as change agents? How do we create them or help them feel empowered for social action?
So yeah, I was just gathering some books that I have and have gotten just along my travels, and for my son, but he's 2 years old, so like some of these books are just not appropriate for him. But we do read this one. So this is I Am Rosa Parks, and it's almost like a little graphic novel about Rosa Parks and her struggles. And then there's a one for older kids called Bessie Smith and the Night Riders, which talks about Bessie Smith and kind of her struggles and her journey with the KKK and all of that. So just, thinking about these age appropriate books and how to build lessons around them are really important. And in our OCF OST Google Drive, we'll start a spreadsheet of all of kind of the age appropriate books that deal with social and racial injustice, because there are a lot of them. And it's really, I think doing something like this couched under a read aloud for the itty bitties is really cool, because then you can kind of tell the story and then begin to build a lesson around it.
I just wanted to bring two things to the space from my work in doing global organizing in my past life before my program liaison work, but just two sort of norms or rules. They're not rules, but norms that we would bring into spaces where we would train young people to be change agents, as Samantha mentioned. I worked with a lot of folks from all different places around the world. And two things that we always set as a norm during our meetings and our trainings and our workshops was, one, it's okay to experience discomfort when you're learning. If you stay where you're comfortable, you might not learn as much, right? Like being able to accept a little bit of discomfort, to sort of teeter on the edge of the cliff and just see what's out there, can be extremely helpful in being able to see new perspectives and to learn new things. So be okay with discomfort. And the next one is that there's no one truth. And when I say truth, I mean truth with a capital T. So there's no one right perspective. There's no one correct way of thinking or correct way of speaking, but understanding that everyone comes with their own perspective and their own truth. Folks experience things in their own way and through their own lens, and being able to understand that and accept that will help in learning how to listen to understand, right? Like before you can really understand someone, you have to be able to accept that other folks will have different experiences. So those two things of experience discomfort. It's okay to be a little bit uncomfortable when you're learning, because that's really pushing you into new spaces and to learn new things. And the second one is that there is no one truth with a capital T. And I'm going to drop links again into the chat box. Samantha shared some links to Chants and Cheers from Freedom School. And then the links that I'm dropping are in the same order as the titles you see in the presentation. And the last link that I put in there is a link to the Google Drive, the OCF OST Google Drive with more resources. And I would love to encourage folks, if you have your own resources, books that you recommend for adults, that you recommend for kids, videos, TED Talks, music, if you have a playlist that you're listening to or something like that, or artists that you want to highlight, please add those into the chat box. If you know a local business that we can support or an organization whose work you want to uplift, please put that into the chat box. The more resources and the more that we're able to gather, the more we're able to learn and be able to support each other and our communities. And we are coming up at the end of our session. So I do want to welcome, if folks have questions, please feel free to put them into the chat box or raise your hand. We'll be on for a few more minutes to answer any questions. But I do want to recognize that we are coming up to 12:30 in the next couple of seconds. So if you do need to go, we would like to honor your time and let you know 12:30 is coming up. But if you have any questions, we're here to help and answer. And for the folks who do need to sign off at the end of our session now, just want to say thank you so much for joining us. It is truly an honor to be able to share this virtual space with you, to have gone through the meditation and shared that experience with you, no matter how much distance is between us, and to know that OCF OST is here for you. So if you ever have any questions, any concerns, or you need a resource, or maybe just someone to listen to, any struggles that you might have right now, that we're here and we will support you in the best way that we can. So please reach out to myself, Naomi, Samantha, or your program liaison. We're here to support and really uplift your work. So again, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be here to answer any questions. And again, yeah, thank you. Take care of yourself. Give yourself a hug. Grab your shoulders. Give yourself a hug. Say thank you, body, for taking care of me when maybe I don't take care of you. Not the best. I will feed you something good today. I promise.
Thanks, everyone.